Have you ever thought why you dress the way you dress? Or why boys don't cry? Or why you have to follow the happily ever after dream? Our discussion of the day is drawn from the gender dimension of development. The point of departure in this video is an acknowledgement of the existence of many discussions and complexities around gender as a concept. The intention, therefore, is to unpack the complexities and present the various phases of subdimensions within which the gender dimensions evolves. A web framework is adopted and applied to help articulate our understanding of gender through the interconnected concepts of intersectionality, hierarchy, empowerment, heteronormativity, and coloniality of gender. As a concept, intersectionality allows us to explore multiple intersecting sources, power relations, and practices of subordination, oppression, and/or privilege. Intersectionality explores how the categories of social interactions mutually construct each other. Instead of analyzing the socio-political interaction of gender, race, caste, class, age, and sexuality separately, intersectionality as a concept seeks to analyze the intermingling of these categories and the resulting interactions of them with other categories.
I am a woman, I get catcalled in the streets. I never got the same wage as my farmer colleagues. But as a white woman, I am not seen as someone else's maid, and I can walk freely without being stopped by the police. Being Western, I have to embrace the idea that I'm gonna get married by my 30s. If I don't, it means I failed. But as someone coming from a privileged background, I can just keep on studying and working and freeze my eggs so I can get pregnant later in life. Even being lesbian, some people may say that I can be whoever I want to be, as long as I don't lose my femininity or don't look like a man. But then again, I am white, but I'm a Latin American in Europe. I am privileged, but I'm a lesbian. I come from a wealthy family, but I'm a migrant. I'm shaped by multiple interactions.
Intersectionality helps us to see how each individual goes through life differently, and it helps rethink development through a multi-level approach, where we not only take into consideration the single level, but also other ones such as identity, norms, and structures when shaping citizens and their experiences. For example, structures are, in effect, an element that influences people's behavior. Let's take the example of hierarchy.
Hierarchy in this context is explained as an intended or unintended existence of an asymmetrical power relations between both men and women, and among men and among women, emanating for an interplay of multiplicity of social relations of power raised under intersectionality, such as race, class, sexuality, ethnicity, etc. Connell writes of hierarchy in terms of gender order and recognizes a multiple and hierarchical forms of masculinities that vary across time, culture, and individual. Gender, therefore, in this case, is seen as an organizing principle of social life, bringing in the domination and subordination effect.
I am partly a byproduct of a largely patriarchal Zimbabwean community, where customary laws have an effect of reproducing and conserve values, norms, and beliefs that favor male dominance over all other sexes. Traditional leaders, as an example, are ordained as custodians of communities. The institutions themselves run within a clan, and normally are a preserve of the eldest men in the clan. In the same breath, we can talk of the general practice of male favoritism on inheritance issues. Talk of heterosexuality. Anything outside that is met with condemnation outright from national level. Patriarch as a system is just one example, but all these practices serve to reproduce hierarchy within a society.
Hierarchy, therefore, is not homogeneous. It evolves with time and varies with place. It is one feature that gives an insight into values of a specific society. It, therefore, has to be put into context. In the line with the concept of hierarchy, empowerment has also served to reproduce certain representations of society. In the past 2 decades, women have gained space in the discussion upon development. Yet, discussions that preceded the IBS Bulletin publication puts at the front the idea that discourses on women's empowerment have been co-opted by neoliberalism. at times a framework that has deepened inequalities and patriarchal relationships. Women have been reduced to a homogeneous category, hardworking, responsible, self-sacrificing mothers that struggles for the well-being of their families. It is then when the concept loses its revolutionary purposes.
I am Lorenza. I come from Colombia. I work with rural cooperatives specializing in cacao cultivation. I often heard of microfinances as a way to boost agricultural projects. Women, especially head of households, have become the main target of microcredits under the assumption that they are more responsible and diligent in paying debt back. The availability of money is said to give them a better capacity of maneuver both in the private and public sphere. Even according to Women's World Banking Network, all women accessing to microcredits just have one single goal: to live a decent life and cover their family's basic needs. Whenever trying to discuss with them the implications of taking a loan, I am often told I don't understand quite well microfinance's capacity to enhance their agency. I am white, I come from the city, I haven't experienced their distress.
Indeed, empowerment has come to be associated with individual self-improvement rather than collective struggle. Our purpose as actors in the remaking and unmaking of development take into account the power relationships at stake and the changes that must be put forward. Empowerment, as co-opted by mainstream discourses, has emphasized homogeneous categories that prioritizes an heterosexual way of being. This has been further scrutinized through the lenses of heteronormativity.
Heteronormativity is the institutionalization of a normative system that privileges heterosexuality as a social order. Because it is not just the exclusion of gender or sexual diverse people, it also affects heterosexual people. In its intersections with gender dichotomy, heteronormativity privileges a kind of coupling and gives it a full regime of rights and regulates life cycles and sexualities.
A cis hetero man, which means I comply or rather conveniently fall in the box of assigned gender roles and practices by the society. An adjective for someone like me is gender normative, that inherently implies anyone identifying with gender diverse experience is abnormal. I have the social privileges and benefit of my sexual identity as long as I perform by the normative gendered rules of the society. As a cis hetero man, I still have to perform my assigned masculine identity, non-adherence to which will have social repercussions. I will still waltz through various social interactions without being stigmatized, mocked at, isolated, polarized, violated, or exploited. Rather, I would be welcomed, celebrated, and listened to. A huge section of our society that doesn't identify with these social structures, called the sexual other, will and still are getting discriminated against, mocked at, polarized, not being listened to. Lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgenders, queer, intersex, pansexual, asexual, and many other marginalized identities have suffered greatly due to the society shoving heteronormativity and gender binary down their throat. Gender, like race and class, are socially constructed categories that have been imposed through specific historical moments. Maria Lugones, a leading decolonial theorist, analyzes the way Western conceptions of gender are intertwined with race and power. Through the imposition of Western understandings of gender and race, the colonial encounters altered indigenous sense of self and identity. This became a tool for domination that imposed two binary oppositions and created new hierarchical social categories. Genderization of indigenous people subordinated them in relation to European men. Indigenous women, defined in their relation to men, became inferior in all categories.
Our mindset has been colonized. Gender has come to be understood as a relation of binaries. We only see men and women through the boxes that the colonizer have established for us. Not adhering to those boxes would grant us the status of not belonging. Yet, this wasn't always the case. The conception of sexuality and the social behavior prior to their colonization differ at a greater extent. Different societies all across the globe had diverse epistemologies. Gender was understood in a more egalitarian term. Colonization was a pivotal point in the social domain Western epistemologies were imposed on us. Global South is still following the notion of liberation given by the epistemologies of the colonizer.
Having gone through the many literature on intersectionality, hierarchy, empowerment, heteronormativity, and coloniality of gender, and read together with our own shared personal experiences, we are of the view that those concepts may mean different things to different people in different spaces and time period. Our approach may not have been exhaustive, however, it is a step in deconstructing the generalized and the linear view of development in the context of gender. It is our contribution that such an expanded lens is so significant in understanding the making, unmaking, and remaking of the development discourse.